Happy New Year. It has been a little over a week, I think, since our last podcast. We decided to take a little time off for the holidays and for regrouping, and we're back. So if you don't know what this is, it's Will You Be My Friend, a podcast with Kylie Gail Garcia and...
Hi, I'm Jasmine.
It's funny because sometimes it switches us. So I'll be like reaching towards you and then I get the Zoom video and it's like reaching away from you and it makes no sense. I don't know why I do that. But anyways, I'm Jasmine. We're here because we've been best friends since first grade and we both love Sex and the City. And we decided when And Just Like That came out that we wanted to do a review show, podcast show. So here we are on season 1, brand new show, Will You Be My Friend? And we are reviewing Sex and the City, or we call it Sex and the City in our private time. We are reviewing And Just Like That, the new Sex and the City chapter that's currently coming out on HBO on Thursdays. And we are doing episode 4 today. How have you been, Jess? How was your little break, holiday, all that?
Yeah, it's been good. I feel like it went by so fast. I'm like not even fully remembering the last few weeks. I feel like everything's just sort of hit me like a ton of bricks. But we're getting through.
I'm laughing because there's like one little drip of like snot trying to come out of my nose right now. And I'm trying to sit here and pretend like it's not. And then behind me, my dog is going, boof, boof, boof. She's like, she knows she's not supposed to be barking, but somebody's out there. So she's doing that. So I'm going to run and get a tissue really quick. Woo. See, we real. We're real. Isn't that what all the people on podcasts say? Like, oh, we're real.
Maybe she was just letting you know some snot was coming. Just like, warning.
It's been kind of a whirlwind and I was so distracted by my nose, I barely heard what you said.
Well, I mean, that was pretty much the gist of what I said.
Yeah.
And that it's been a whirlwind, not dripping, woof woofing, just whirlwind.
Yes.
But we here.
See?
We here, we out here. We're getting
just,
through.
Over here figuring it out one day at a time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I am feeling though, like there's a new energy happening. Like I'm feeling a little better, a little more grounded today. And I'm glad for that. It wasn't that the holidays were hard or bad. It just has been a lot.
Yes.
So
yeah.
Ready for new things.
Same here. A mixture of things, some kind of like exciting realizations, but also kind of like, whoa, this could change my whole life realizations. And so just trying to be patient and trying to like really listen to myself and, trust the gods above.
As we do.
Yes. So anyway, so what are you drinking today?
Oh man, today I'm actually drinking yerba mate. It just hits different in the middle of the day. It's so good right now. And I just felt like I wanted a little boost.
Nice. What brand do you like? Is it called the yerba mate or is it?
Mm-hmm. Well, yerba mate is the tea. And then there are a bunch of different brands. I think this one's just a new organic one I found online and I cannot remember what it's called. Honestly, I bought it because it came in a cute little, like a little sack. Like, what do you call it? Like the little, like the little coffee bag looking sack.
I was just going to say like a coffee bean thing.
Yeah, it came in this really cute little bag. And so I bought it, but actually it's not my favorite. I've definitely had, if people know mate, like this one's a little dusty and it's, I tend to prefer the more mild ones, but that's what I'm drinking today. And I'm not drinking it out of a traditional gourd. This is my little ceramic mug that I got at an art thing that just fits it so well. The handle broke off and it's like the perfect yerba mate little gourd. So
cute.
That's me today.
I've never actually had it on my own. I think I've only had it with you. at your house. And whatever you gave me like years ago, I thought was delicious. And I don't know why I haven't just like gone and bought some. Well, it has caffeine, right?
It does have well, yeah. I've heard some people argue that it doesn't, but I mean, yeah, it does. They
probably like
say
on the
it's a
scale, it's
different
probably
kind
not
of
that high.
caffeine. Yeah, they say it's like a different type of caffeine. I find it is a cleaner energy, but it's pretty potent. I don't know. I'd say it's right up there with coffee, but you don't get the jitters like with coffee.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there must be something in it that kind of balances it out or something, because I don't get jittery with it.
I just remember loving the flavor of it. It was like, it reminded me of something and I don't know what, but I loved the flavor and I love the little like straw and just the whole like experience of it.
It's an
I love a good like
experience.
just drink experience, you know?
Me too.
I'm having a green juice again. It's not celery this time, but it's a green juice. It's cucumber, pineapple, kale, ginger, and lemon, I think. I made it yesterday and it was in my fridge. I have a bunch of stuff to make like fun, interesting mocktails. And I am always just perpetually like trying to be on time. And I actually kind of was on time today. So yay me. I said 1:30. I made it by 1:30. That's pretty good for Kylie. So anyways, I was like, I thought about making like a more fancy drink. And then I saw the green juice and I was like, well, it's right there. Be on time, Kylie. Just respect people's time. Working on it. So anyways, it's pretty delicious and it's quite cold.
I love pineapple in a juice. So good.
Oh, yes. Pineapple makes everything better. I feel like if people don't like greens, if you just add pineapple, it's like, oh, no, it's good.
Yes.
Like I give that to my husband and he's not a green juice person and he'll be like, oh, that's good. Like, or if you combine apples with pineapple with your green juice, then it's like sweet and kids will drink it. I mean,
so good.
Magic thing.
And mint. I love mint too.
Yes.
Like put mint in there and I will drink anything.
Oh yeah. I think there's a mint and pineapple juice at my friend's juicery in Chino, the organic juicery. I think the Power is what it's called. It's like pineapple, mint, and something else. Very good. Anyway, if anybody's in Chino, go support Nick. All right. So I'm going to do the recap of episode 4 of And Just Like That.
Episode
it's
4.
Called Some of My Best Friends. Looking to move forward, Carrie meets with self-made real estate broker Seema Patel. Meanwhile, Charlotte plans a high-stakes dinner party for LTW as Miranda and Naya connect over the frank realities of motherhood. Initial thoughts.
I feel like the little recap is kind of funny. And the frank realities of motherhood. I felt like that I would have described the episode differently, but sure, that's how they want to recap it. Yeah, I took notes kind of going in order of the episodes. I don't know if you want to dive in just kind of like right where they started, which was Carrie sleeping on a completely bare mattress in her old apartment.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I saw somebody, because I follow, we have an Instagram. If you want to follow it, it's Will You Be My Friend Show. On that Instagram, I started following all these Sex and the City and Just Like That fan pages and stuff. And somebody, I think it was Every Outfit on Sex and the City, commented that they love that she's using the jacket from the episode where she walks the runway. That's what she's like sleeping under. And I was like, oh, I didn't notice that. So I think that's pretty funny. But yeah, so we found her back at her old apartment because that's where we left her end of episode 3, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I thought it was so funny that like her apartment, her whole entire apartment is essentially like a big storage unit. And I just thought, wow, if only. That's an expensive storage unit, but it was kind of cool and kind of fun. And then just funny because I know apparently Stanford had said in a previous episode that he had a key, and I'm just imagining him like going into this apartment, and I was wondering like what he does in there, like if he's just kind of crumpled into a corner like amongst all the boxes and the bare mattress. And
That's kind of
I,
funny.
I just thought, why after all this time not like make it cute and make it kind of fun? But okay, maybe not a lot of
Yeah.
time is spent in there.
Yeah, well, it was for, I think at the end of the second movie, it was still cute. And it was like, oh, this is where like people go when they need a break or whatever. And there was like the scenes of Charlotte, reading a magazine or something. And,
Yeah.
it was like still cute how they had redone it for the first movie. And now it looks a little bit different. I don't remember. I did like that wallpaper though. There's like these
Yeah.
big blue flowers. And I was like, well, obviously I'm a fan of blue, but but yeah, I don't know. Hopefully it'll start like getting fixed up since she's kind of going to go back and live there. And maybe it's symbolic a little bit of kind of like the mess of her life at this moment,
Yeah, just like a little capsule of like all her different little things. I mean, she didn't even have a coffee maker. She had to go get coffee, which
who
I
like
know.
how? I don't even, when the coffee maker like explodes, I was like
how is there even
way
physically
would
that much
happen
water?
is how?
Right.
Like if you didn't put a filter, maybe.
I had the same thought. I was like, how is it actually exploding? Like, what is happening?
Yeah. Or you literally like stood there and just like overfilled it and overfilled it. Like,
yeah, I can see it like not working at all, but then that it was just like completely overflowing. I was like, where is all of this coming from?
it was so TV.
What a mess.
I was like, I've literally never I've had it spit places because I forgot to put the filter in, or I forgot to put something in the right way. And I've had it like spit out a little bit, but I've never had one like fully explode.
It has been years and years since I've used a coffee machine like that. I think it was when I was living in the Buddhist monastery. Like that was the last time. And ever since then I have like, French presses, Chemexes, like even a Turkish coffee pot. I have like everything else but that very simple coffee maker. I have a hard time believing that anyone has a coffee maker still like that. Do you have a coffee maker?
We have like with a little mug thing in it. I don't really do caffeine anymore, but Julio will make like regular old like Folgers type coffee early in the morning if he has to wake up really early. So we have like the one with you're talking about it's not like a 1 cup. Hers looked like a 1 cup, but this is like, a regular one that is old school.
I think Will and I got sucked into that like hipster coffee culture a little while ago. I forget that there's a world outside of that.
It's probably way better. And there was a time, maybe there's still like people out there that are like into it, but I feel like there was a time where coffee was like, it was like right when Starbucks was like a big thing too. And maybe in my mind, it's funny. It's like our perception. Like in your mind, you're like, who has that kind of coffee maker? And I'm like, I do. And then in my mind, I'm like, who like is doing all this coffee stuff anymore? Because that was like back in college when I feel like that was like a thing in my life. And now I just haven't had coffee. So I'm like, well, everybody makes celery juice every morning, right?
Right.
Like, no. So I don't know, just perception, I guess. But I think, your coffee, anytime I've ever had coffee at your house, it's always really good. So there's something to that.
And now we have an espresso maker and we just use that mostly because it's easier. But yeah, when Carrie goes to get coffee though, I had no idea, zero idea. I thought it was like a mistake that he had made, that her name is actually Caroline. Did you know this?
I thought that was such an interesting surprise. And you know what? I loved that scene because, again, I will always talk about my time in New York and hopefully I will be back. I plan to be back, hopefully. But when I lived there, I had the most wonderful fruit man. And his name was Mullah, and he's from Bangladesh. And I was doing like a whole raw food thing, detox thing. And I went through kind of like a hard time, and I was like not wanting to even leave my apartment. And so when I finally like was leaving my apartment and feeling better, the first person that I really saw besides my husband and like one of my closest friends in New York was Mola because I went to go get fruit from him. So when I saw her like walk in and he like greeted her like Caroline, and it just like reminded me, of course, Mola wasn't in like a, I forget what they call those, like a hi-fi or something. They like a bodega. I'm not sure the difference. There's all these like words that they use for those little markets, but he wasn't in a market. He was a fruit stand out on the street. But still, when I would like go and see him, he would see me from like a distance up the block and he'd be like, my angel. And I'd be like, Mola. And I'd run in and I would buy like a whole bunch of fruit from him. And he always gave me like overripe fruit that people wouldn't buy and stuff. Anyway, so I had like an emotional attachment to him. And sometimes I'll just think about him and cry because I miss him. Because he just was there for me when I wouldn't let other people in, you know. It was like a necessity at that time for me to go to the fruit guy to get food. So he saw me like through all that process of detoxing. Anyways, that's the first thing I thought of was Mola. And I was like, oh, I wonder like how many stages of her life that this guy has been here for, you know?
Yeah. So sweet. So similar, but she was probably buying cigarettes and coffee and not fruit.
Yes. Yeah. That's what it sounded like. But it's just funny. I don't know. I love that whole thing where to me, like I get into like a little bit of a routine. I think everybody has somewhat of routine. And I just love when you get to know somebody because they're just like on your path in your world like that. And it's like a necessity, but then you know them as a person after a while. And you realize like, it's like easy to take them for granted. And then you realize like, oh, like I miss that person in my life when they're not there, you know?
Yeah, definitely. They definitely had a very sweet, like, for sure, like her coming back into town. And then he was so sweet with her and gave her the roll and the coffee on the house and remembered her order after all that time. Called her Caroline, which I was like, what? Did he make that up? I was like, how have I watched this show so many times? And I literally did not, I thought Carrie was just her name.
Yeah.
So I felt a little silly.
I didn't really think of that. And then I was like, well, maybe it's like, he's the only one, you know, that ever called her that, you know? But it's just funny. Maybe because it's like on her cards or something. Maybe it says Caroline Bradshaw or Caroline Preston.
I mean,
on her cards. So he's like, oh, good morning, Caroline.
I was like, I must not be that much of a fan or something. Cause like, that was so news to me. I was like, oh my God, what? But I digress. Yes. Oh, I had another thought too. Speaking of cigarettes, so maybe because I watched a couple other shows in a movie where people were also smoking, but I just noticed when they introduced Seema, like first things first, she drops a cigarette out of the car, steps on it with her amazing shoes, and it's kind of making this statement. And I was just like, are cigarettes weirdly making a comeback? Like, why am I seeing so many people smoking and so many cigarettes? I thought they were like gone and on their way out. Are you noticing this too, or is this just me?
Well, I haven't seen a lot of things lately where people are smoking necessarily, but in the context of Sex and the City, I feel like there's a specific meaning to smoking for Carrie, for sure. It's kind of like her bad habit, like during the series when she gets into the affair with Big, they start smoking again together. And even when she like tells her friends what's happening, she's like, I'm smoking and I'm sleeping with Big, like it goes together, right? So I think it's kind of like a symbolic thing for her of like, I'm having a hard time, or I'm kind of falling apart, or like and yet, you know, you see this like relief, and there's kind of a weird, at least for me as like a viewer, it's almost like a weird comfort. Like I'm not much of a smoker. I never really was. But like, just to see her smoking again is almost like, oh, it's almost like the apartment. It's like, the old Carrie again. And you're like, oh, like, look at her kind of just going back to like what she's comfortable with. And, but for Seema, I don't know if they're trying to tell us like, look, she's like an old school New Yorker, or, you know, it's just a character thing or something that she could bond over. Maybe that was foreshadowing that Carrie was going to start smoking again, because she's meeting this person who's a new friend who also smokes. But yeah, I don't know about it being cool, but I guess it does kind of come off cool the way they present it in the show too. Like
I just
her,
thought
like
it was so interesting,
leaning out the window.
yeah. I definitely like
cool,
I watched it and was just like, oh yeah, old Carrie, love it. And then I don't know, I just feel like I keep watching different movies and being like, they're smoking too. Like what is with cigarettes? Like they just seem to be everywhere right now. I don't know. We watched Don't Look Up.
Oh, I haven't watched it yet.
Oh, I won't say anything.
Good.
It's so good. We loved it. But there was definitely like, I don't know, just someone was smoking in that movie, and Will and I looked at each other. We were just like, does it seem like everyone's smoking?
Yeah.
It's just so strange to me.
Are cigarettes making a comeback?
Right. Only acceptable for Carrie. Nobody else should be smoking. Just Carrie.
Just Carrie. But like keep her immune to getting any diseases, please.
Right, exactly.
Can't handle it. She's been through enough, okay? So where do we go from there? Do we go to the mothers? Do we go to Charlotte with the mothers?
Let's see. So Charlotte is chatting with the other parents about like some kind of a school trip or something, and just reminding me of why I homeschooled for so long. Because those sorts of things make me so uncomfortable. I just felt so uncomfortable, but everybody just trying to figure out where to take the kids on the trip. And then Charlotte and her friend trying to become closer friends, not just mommy friends, trying to take that next step, which does feel a little bit like dating. It is kind of like, I definitely have friends like that. Like, this is a mom friend. I'd like to be more. I'd like to be a little more serious, see each other more often. So yeah, she's trying to make friends. How did you feel about that, being someone who doesn't have children?
Well, it reminded me of one of the reasons I don't. Because, well, when I nannied in New York, I did have like the role of picking up the girls from school, and it was interesting. It was like I lived on 90th, the girls lived on 80th, and like their school was on like 83rd, I think, or 84th. So I just like walk down and get them and like see all the same moms. And sometimes, they would all be going to this little book club that the mom that I nannied for had started. And so I would like kind of interact with the other moms, but I wasn't a mom. But there's just kind of a certain, and I don't know, it could be different in the city than it is in other places, or it could be the same. I'm not sure, but I feel like there was just like a specific attitude and kind of like my kids better than any of all other kids kind of attitude. And I was just like, okay, like I just didn't get it, and I probably never will, to be honest, unless I ever become a mom. I just was like, well, this is weird. Like, this is a weird world I find myself in. And I don't even know if I can elaborate on it, except for it just felt weird. And
yeah,
like, well, I don't belong here. What am I doing? But, but yeah, I just kind of, I don't know, like kind of snooty vibes to me. And I got that from the Charlotte little circle of moms scene, where I was like, oh, they're kind of like snooty. Like, I don't know how I feel about it.
Yeah, I felt pretty cringy about it for sure. I mean, yeah, just not only did it look uncomfortable, I like Charlotte and I like her friend, and I'm like enjoying them, but I also would hate to be in a circle with somebody talking to me like that and telling me where I'm going to take my child to go on some sort of a field trip, and just like shutting me down. I was like, hey, the pet thing sounded kind of cool. Like, could we have a conversation? I don't know. I just felt like a super like, oh, hate that.
Yeah.
Hate that.
Yeah.
Don't love it.
Why don't we just get on the same page and do it? I don't know. I don't understand when people can't just agree on, I just like, there's going to be other field trips. Like, why don't you plan that one for next month or whenever they do another field trip? Like, what's the big deal? It's not a competition. That's what it felt like. It feels like a competition. Like
it did. Who's the mom on top?
Yeah. And the whole like dropping the ball thing and like,
yeah. Right. Like we're all just
sometimes I feel
out.
like it's like alien to me. Like I'm watching and I'm like, oh, this is weird. Like more reasons not to do this.
Yeah. Same. Oh, I didn't love that. Although the point was supposed to be that Charlotte starts to kind of step into this, trying to have like diversity in her friend circle. So it wasn't even about like the other moms. It was more about her realizing that she doesn't have a diverse enough friend circle, because they're going to have kind of like a small little dinner get together, which I thought was hilarious, because Charlotte then immediately like spins out and it's not simple.
They're all vanilla. She was like, oh, they're kind of vanilla. They're all vanilla. It's like, oh no,
it's too vanilla.
Oh my
Which
God.
was just so hilarious and so ridiculous. Like it cracked me up. And I was like, I've literally never looked around and thought of the diversity of my friend circle and tried to like pull people in based on race. That just completely cracked me up. I was like, that's so hilarious. And just so Charlotte, like she just took it to a whole nother level. Like really going to town, texting that neighbor, being so obnoxious. And I thought it was so funny. And then for the whole dinner to not even happen anyway.
Yeah.
It was really funny.
I did feel bad for Charlotte with the dinner not happening, because like it's so like she's trying to be all casual and breezy about it, and then she's just like, oh, I'm sorry, like it's not, and she's like, okay. And then the neighbor knew exactly what she was doing. Like, there's no way that neighbor did not know. And she closes the door and it's like immediately like she gets the text, oh, okay. But I did kind of like the bait and switch where you're thinking, let's like building up to this whole thing, you're thinking like, okay, Charlotte's going to have this like super awkward vanilla group gathering, and there's going to be just this one Black couple, and there's going to be some weird tension or awkwardness. And then what ends up happening is she ends up going to LTW's husband's birthday party, and they're the only white people or whatever.
Yes.
And then she makes that snafu right away, which was so cringy.
Cringy.
Gasped, and I was just like, oh no. I was like, that is so bad.
It was so bad. I thought that whole scene though was probably my favorite. I thought Harry stole the show, like from the time in the elevator to the whole thing, like they mentioning Michelle Obama, and he's like, I loved her book. Just so excited to like say something and contribute to the conversation.
Oh my God. It reminded
so
me
good.
Of Leo. Like because I can be a little I'm a lot sometimes. And so like if we're meeting friends that I've known, but he doesn't know them or something, I'll be like, oh, like, I'll kind of do that. Like, I don't mean to, but I'll be like, oh, like, because, okay, backing up, he is not naturally like a small talk person. Like he just does not like to just go places just to make conversation with people. It's uncomfortable to him, and he kind of like gets awkward and doesn't know what to say. And then sometimes he says things that he thinks are funny, and then other people don't get that he thinks he's being funny or whatever. So sometimes I'll kind of like be like, oh, like you could do this, or you could talk about that, or like try to kind of give him, pointers so he doesn't feel so awkward. But I mean, he hasn't done anything exactly like that, but it just made me think of him in a way, because I was like, oh, like he's trying. He's just, the way that he is like he needs to be doing something with people, like not just sitting down eating and talking. He needs to like join, like he wants to join like a adult soccer league, or he needs to like do a sport or do an activity or meet them through work, or He just isn't like a small talk person.
Like a dinner
so
party person.
Think about like, oh, I loved her book.
And he said it with so much confidence and joy. And I just loved that for him. I mean, the whole time in the elevator, he's just like, you're sweating already. And he's just like, wonder why. Like he just is so like, he's like, and it made me think about how Charlotte is and like her personality and how he's been so sweet all the way up until we first met him, you know, in Sex and the City. And then here he is just putting up with this level of Charlotte for all this time and just completely rolling with it. And I was like, he is an angel on this earth. I just loved him.
Yeah, I do love Harry. But then, you know, Charlotte has kind of a save, which is she kind of dunks, actually. It's not just a save. It's like, damn, Charlotte.
I loved that. Her whole little monologue about the art was just gold. It was so good.
Yeah. And how she talked about it being her passion. I wonder if she's ever going to get back into it or if she's totally just happy being a mom.
I know. I wondered that too, especially with how she just like said everything so well and eloquently. And everyone was just like listening to her at the table, just hanging on her every word. And it's like, oh, you could like tell is such a big part of her life. And it was really cool. I know nothing about art. So everything she was saying, she could have just been talking all bunk and I'd have no idea. So I was like, yeah, absolutely. I'm here with you. But it was really great. I loved it. I loved that whole scene. I
don't really know much about art either. And the extent of the art stuff that I know is like, if I go in, I used to like to go and wander like the galleries, or sometimes in Palm Springs, there's some cute galleries, and I like to just go in, but I don't really get familiar with specific artists or know like the history of things. I just like to go look. That's pretty much all I know. I don't own anything expensive. Everything I have is from like TJ Maxx, but you know, it's not real art. It's like, you know, canvas prints or whatever those are. But I do enjoy like the visual of art and walking, but I would never be able to do, I mean, I shouldn't say never, but I don't see myself being able to just like rattle off all that information like somebody who's like an art major would. I do have a friend from New York that worked in the art scene, and she probably knew exactly what she was talking about. So, but yeah, I was just happy for Charlotte that she was having like that moment, and that it kind of felt like it saved, you know, it saved everything. I don't know. I just got a really weird text and I was like, what is, oh, I don't even know what this is. Oh, okay. Now I know who it is. It actually is my friend from New York. That's actually who it was. Oh, wow. But I didn't recognize, you know, sometimes like, does your computer do this where I have an Apple computer and Apple phone. So like when you get text, it shows up on the computer. Anyways, it showed up.
Mine doesn't show up on the computer. I don't let it.
It's weird. Sometimes it tells me who it is, and sometimes it's only the number. And I was like, who's 214, blah, blah, blah. And then I looked and I was like, oh, nobody. Anyways, side note. So yeah, so I was kind of happy about that. So then do we go to Miranda? And Miranda smells like weed?
So Miranda smells like weed. Just chilling. All the alternative types.
So what is this?
The language that they give her just like cracks me up. It's like anytime there's any sort of like, I don't even know what the word for it is. It's just anytime she could say something like alternative types, they just give that to her. They're like, all right, Miranda, you're way down here on the woke scale. It's just like hilarious. So all the alternative types, smoking the weed, and then going out to lunch with her professor.
Oh yeah.
Which, yeah.
Oh yeah. That was the conversation that I could not wait to talk to you about.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever heard anything like that on TV or in a movie, that type of conversation. And I just felt so validated and seen.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, it sounds kind of like Naya, the professor, isn't sure, and she's afraid she's going to regret it if she doesn't have a kid. And then Miranda obviously already has a kid, and she's like, I didn't really, but I did it and it was great. I kind of thought that Naya was gonna say like, I actually don't want to. Like I thought they were gonna do more of a hard line.
Yeah.
But when they kind of blurred it a little bit, I almost thought it was even better. Like
Yeah. Well, so
you
real,
know,
right? So real. Because at her presumed age, I don't know if they've said her age and maybe I missed it, but assuming that she's kind of feeling that biological clock kind of feeling, and she's already gone through the process of IVF, which is a long process. There's a lot of doctor's appointments, there's a lot of money and all kinds of things being invested. So she's probably feeling like, okay, I've already invested so many resources, so much time, so much energy to this thing. Like, do I want this? And just kind of really, and I don't know, I mean, probably so many people can relate to that. I do think that going through IVF really takes a lot of the fun out of the process of growing a family. It can be exciting in its own ways, but it's challenging. So it's fatiguing, it's challenging. People always talk about the hormones, but it's so much more than that. So if you're already even a little bit on the fence, now you're going through this too. I mean, so relatable.
yeah.
So relatable.
Well, you would be the person to talk about it. You're the birth expert. I don't know anything about that, and that's interesting that you say that because I was thinking more just like, I kind of wasn't even thinking about the IVF. I was just thinking like, oh, like she's trying to have a baby. I don't know what that entails. So I kind of skimmed over it and I was like, oh, but she's not sure. Like, how interesting, what an interesting conversation. But now that you say that, I'm like, how could you not be sure and go through all that? Or maybe it's she's going through it and she's realizing she's not sure.
Right. Like all of
You
a sudden
know?
this train is like barreling down the tracks and you're already on it. You're like, oh no, like, I'm not sure if I actually want to get off on that stop back there. Yeah. I mean, so wild. I mean, tell me more about your thoughts though on it. I'm really curious because I kind of hijacked that with the IVF stuff.
No, I think that's really interesting information that helps me have like a different context. I just felt like hearing somebody say like, I feel like it almost sounded like she was saying, I feel like I should want this.
Yeah, I got that
like
sense too.
Do. And I've definitely been through that phase where like everyone around me is like, oh, you've been married for this long. Like, where's the kids? When are you going to have kids? Like, it's just this given thing. And it's so uncomfortable because it makes you feel like something must be wrong with you, that you wouldn't just automatically be like, oh yeah, of course I have a plan for that. Like, I want to do that. It's more like, yeah, it just makes you feel really alone and uncomfortable. So it was like the opposite of that feeling. Like I was like, oh, like this is another human and I'm not like watching something that's trying to convince me to do it. It's something that's just telling me like, hey, you're not alone in the world in your feelings. And, but I have had that phase before where I was like, I really need to make sure that I don't want them because I have another person involved in this that may want them. And I need to be clear with that person. But I also, the biological clock thing. I'm not old. I'm 32. I still have some time, but still like getting into your 30s, you kind of start thinking about that, I feel like. And we come from a small town where people had kids younger, I think. So
yeah.
So a lot of people that we know that we graduated with already have like full-fledged families,
A whole broad.
So yeah. So yeah. And I just, it's hard to be sure, and especially it made me curious about her husband too. Like, is her husband the one that's more into it? And she's just trying to kind of do that for him.
Yeah.
I don't think that I would have even thought that much about it if I hadn't been married to somebody who was kind of interested in having kids at one point.
Yeah. It was so interesting. And I know at one point, as they were sitting down talking, she did say like she had started her period, the cycle failed, and she was glad. And she was sort of admitting that like it was this shameful thing. Like I was really happy that it didn't take this time. And I think that's a relatable feeling too, sometimes to people, of like the overwhelmingness, the bigness of this decision, and then realizing you have a little bit more time to kind of figure it out and decide if this is actually something you want to do. I'm curious to see if they're going to make this next cycle take, because Miranda did kind of say like, okay, well, she was teasing her a little bit, but saying, if this takes, then it's going to be the best thing ever. And just sort of obviously lying.
Yeah.
And I'm curious how that's kind of go, you know, if it's going to just kind of be failed IVF and see what happens, or if it is going to take.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. Cause that was the thing that I really like felt, was when she said she felt relief.
Yeah.
And I was like, I've said that exact thing before. When I've taken a pregnancy test and it was negative, I felt like, oh, like, you know, like I'm out of the woods.
Yeah.
You know? And it's not, I'm not like, it's even hard to say because I get scared saying these things, being truthful as who I am, saying this about myself. I get scared that people who have children think that I'm like the Wicked Witch of the West, or somebody who hates children, or I'm awkward around children. I'm not great with them, but I like kids. There's maybe not all of them, but but I like my nieces and nephews, and you know, and I love your kids when I've gotten to spend time with them. And you know, I mean, I love you so much. They have your characteristics and Will's characteristics, so why wouldn't I love them? But you know, and I understand they're just little people, but it's just, I think the whole responsibility for like a whole nother life. I was still trying to figure myself out, you know, and I just, you know, maybe one day I try not to like fully, you know, again, we reserve the right to change our minds, but it's been pretty certain since I was young so far that it's not for me quite yet. So, or maybe ever.
Yeah.
It just felt good to have somebody actually say that and have it be like, okay, you know, and them not be shamed for that.
Yeah, definitely. I was just kind of thinking, like, remembering that, I don't remember what season it was, but the time when Carrie was struggling with the same exact question of like, should I or shouldn't I? They did like a whole episode on it about having kids or not having kids. And they really did frame it around like her and that relationship with a man, instead of just her relationship with herself and if she wanted kids or not. It just was I don't remember like exactly how I felt about the conversation at that time. So I do feel like this conversation and this newer episode, it is a little bit different and has some potential there to just, relate to people in a different way who are choosing different life paths. And I think more and more people are either choosing to not have kids or have kids later in life, just for so many reasons, economic reasons, just all kinds of things. It's not exactly the same as it was, where it was like, get married, have babies. You know, not everybody's on board with that now, which I think is great. I think it's really great to have these options to create a life you actually want. Because it's true, like what Miranda says, you know, if you have regrets, having a child doesn't take regrets away. It just adds a child to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a whole lifestyle.
Yeah. And I think, you know, depending on what people are thinking, like for me, I feel like if I ever did like take a total 180 and be like, I have to have children, if I was, you know, later on in life or beyond childbearing years, like to me, I'm like, oh, then I could adopt, or we could foster, or, you know, to me, that's like on the table option for later.
Yeah.
And I don't feel this need. Like I get ads for freezing my eggs. I don't know if you get that, but I don't know, Instagram or something knows that I'm 32 and have no children.
Oh my God. I have never gotten an
like,
ad for that.
Like,
that's hilarious.
And I'm like, this is offensive. Like I will report them. I'll be like, this is not of interest to me. Like, stop. That's what I get. I get adult acne, and I get a freaking freeze your eggs. That's what I get.
Oh my God. That's so funny.
So
That
rude.
is so funny. I wonder what you've searched or done that would make them target you that way.
You know what? I may have Googled like how to know for sure when I was trying to figure out for sure if I wanted kids or not. I probably Googled like, how do you
Oh
know
my
for sure
gosh.
if you want kids or don't want kids?
And those little robots were like, no, no.
Yeah. They're like, you want kids.
Oh
Here's
my
another
God.
option. And it's so
That's
expensive.
so funny. Oh yeah,
Oh.
it's so expensive.
Well, even what you said about Carrie, there's two times I think that they kind of talk about that. There's early seasons where she thinks she's pregnant when they go to the baby shower.
Oh, right.
Right?
Yes.
And then I think you were talking about when she's with Petrovsky, right?
That's what I was talking about, the later on. I forgot they also talked about it earlier too. I
But I
remember.
don't
And
know that it
I
was
guess the
even.
one with the shoes too. So it's kind of been sprinkled throughout, but
Yeah.
yeah, the one with the shoes where she chose shoes over babies.
I love
I
that
think they
one.
always sort of blamed, I think I always felt like they blamed Carrie's kind of child not having children, like kind of blamed it on her not being in a relationship or not being married. And then now we kind of see the professor struggling with these feelings also in a relationship, which is a little bit of a different thing, just kind of highlighting that like it's not all about just because they haven't found the right person.
Yeah. And I think that's why it really hit me different was like, oh, like she's in a committed relationship. Are they married? Do we
I
know?
don't really know. Honestly, if they've said it, I haven't paid that close of attention.
Yeah. So
There's kind
the
of a
teams that
lot of
they've
little
been
characters to keep track of, I feel like. Like I'm really focused on, Carrie and Miranda and Charlotte. And then like I personally have honestly just been glazing over a little bit some of these new characters that they're throwing in. They're fun. I like them, but I'm not like super invested.
Yeah. Because
Not yet anyway.
I mean, it can't be the same investment that we've had for how many years?
Right.
You know what I mean? And
Exactly.
hopefully they'll kind of like find their way in. They do have interesting things that they're throwing in, but yeah, it's just not the same as like the main cast. Anyways, so I did feel like, okay, like she's in a committed relationship and struggling with this, and I feel like a lot of what I've heard, I know we've gone long on this, but a lot of what I've heard about that is kind of like, well, you should have figured that out before.
Right.
And I got married at 21. So, I did say to my husband before we got married, I said, if you're going to marry me, like you need to know that I may never want kids. I've never wanted them and I don't want them now. And you need to know that. And he took some time and then came back and was like, okay, like I still want to marry you, blah, blah, blah. And, so to me, I guess that was just really helpful and validating to be like, they're in a relationship and committed and like, she's having a struggle with that.
Yeah.
Instead of just like, I feel like the old thing that you hear all the time when you're in that situation is like, well, you should have. And it's like, well, what am I going to do with should have?
Yeah.
I've been married for 10 years. Like, I said the thing, I was honest and, we decided to get married anyways. And I think a lot of people avoid that conversation of like, how do you figure it out if you're on different pages,
Yeah. I wonder if they're going to go even deeper into that conversation or if they're just going to leave it where they did.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I
do
find
too.
all this deeper stuff that they're getting into. I'm like, yes, like, let's talk about this.
Definitely. I agree. I completely agree.
It's not like fluffy anymore. I feel like TV shows used to be just kind of like fluffy and glazing over things or like simple answers. And I feel like a lot of these things are complicated issues without simple answers, and there's not like one right answer.
Yeah.
So anyways, I'm loving that. That was my favorite thing. So to me, it was worth spending all that time on.
Yeah.
Okay. We had to take a small break because we didn't want to abandon any children. So
priority number one.
Acknowledge this. I'm going to leave that in there potentially. Wait, are you having Inner Eco?
I am drinking Dr. Brew CBD kombucha. I've switched.
Ooh.
I went from mate. I went from a little upper to a little downer. Didn't even realize that till right now.
Just riding the waves today. I finished my juice and I was going to make a smoothie, but then I cut up cantaloupe, but I probably won't eat it on camera because I don't want to be obnoxious.
Yeah, I went to go, what is water, right? I went to go grab something to drink and I have water here too, but I saw that I started this yesterday and I was like, oh, that was good. I'm going to grab that. It's good. It's rosemary, mint, sage with hemp extract. To be honest, to me, I don't know if it's the rosemary. It does smell a little bit like weed. When I first opened it, I was like, that's a choice. Okay. You know,
I feel like sage is more weedy to me than rosemary.
Oh,
but I
that
do
it could
love
be
rosemary.
that. Yeah, it just is very herbal. It's good. It's really good. I like it.
I mean, I don't know that I want to spend that much time on this, but I did write down the girl Chloe. I think we've established that we're not that into the podcast. Our podcast we love, but the X, Y, and Me or whatever podcast that carries on.
Yeah.
There's that little scene where they're telling her to get back on social media.
That's
and the girl's name
right.
is Chloe, and she's like basically saying that everything is dead and all this stuff. And
I laughed about that. I actually wrote myself a note because I was like, whoever in the world refers to somebody's social media as a corpse. I was like, what? Like, no one would say that.
she was so like, I don't know if it's millennial anymore or if it's the generation after it, but she was so like young person-y. She, you know?
Yeah, it was very funny. It was just like, what's happening here? She was so intense and just kept, I get that they were trying to like drive home that point of like her being insensitive, but I couldn't tell if it was funny or annoying, honestly.
Yeah.
It just was so like death, dead, corpse, like everything possible. Yeah. I do remember thinking that in that part.
Yeah, it was a lot. I feel like actually the one thing I want to know now that we're on the podcast, she wants my melons. Those melons. If you're listening and not watching, Nina has put her paws on me and popped into frame, and she's trying to get my cantaloupe. So if you're listening and you hear me say she wants my melons, that's what I'm talking about. I realized in the first few episodes, I was like, there's some things I might need to explain for people that aren't watching. Anyways, the one thing that scene kind of like reminded me of that I haven't mentioned because it's not that consequential, like there's literally nothing happening. It's just their like producer of the podcast is so cute.
Yeah.
And I'm like wondering, are they going to use him more, or is he just like a cute guy that's just there?
Right. He just like randomly
like
pops in.
Where he like comes in and kind of like, oh yeah, like has like a little mini interaction, and you're like, oh, there he is again.
Just randomly pops in. That's so true. That's so true. I find it very distracting because not only, I haven't said this yet, but it is one of the biggest things that distracts me. And it's so stupid. That's why I haven't said it. But I already don't love the podcast. And the guy on the podcast, my husband really loves the YouTube show Hot Ones. I don't know if you've ever watched it.
I've seen that.
Okay. Well, that guy was on an episode of Hot Ones and he literally shit his pants on the show. I'm not joking. You should look it up.
Oh my gosh.
And so every time, and it like drives me crazy because whenever they do a podcast scene, that's all I can think about. That's all I can think about. It's because that's the only context I know him in. I don't know his comedy. I don't know him from anywhere else. Don't really know who he is. I just know him from that episode of Hot Ones. And I like see that scene in Hot Ones every time. So his sort of obnoxious behavior in the podcast is very, very distracting to me because I only know him as being obnoxious on Hot Ones and crapping his pants on the show.
I have no
yeah
words.
He like
I don't even know how
unapologetically
to
like
react.
craps his pants. Yeah.
Like I want to ask questions, but I don't even know what questions to ask.
It's alarming. Like it's really alarming, and it's hilariously alarming because the host of that show, I think he's a really great interviewer. I actually really like him a lot, but like his face is so shocked. Like he's just like completely like, but there's an, from his point of view, the interviewer, he said there was like an audible thump of like, yeah. So it's it's a whole thing. And now, so you can understand why now when I watch these, not only do I find the podcast to be a little bit obnoxious, I just see his face and I'm just like, that's all I can think about. So distracting.
This is kind of hilarious because now, see, I might have to like put them somewhere else, but I don't know if you're hearing this, but there's little like toys, and I've been buying them these piggy ones because they don't make like a high squeak, they make like a low squeak. So as you're talking about a guy shitting his pants, I'm hearing this wah, wah.
You should just pretend that's the noise of
that's our sound effect.
And that, yeah, perfect. Thank you. Yes, thank you, Nina. That's excellent work.
Perfect timing. Oh, if you're listening, you should probably just watch this one. I'm just letting you know because there's a lot of things happening.
We have guests
that are hard to explain. If you're on Spotify, go to YouTube right now. Anyways, so yeah, so, I mean, I don't know that there was much to say except for that was just a weird little moment. And also I just wanted to mention, in case he comes back, that I'm hoping for the hottie producer or whoever to like have more involvement. How about, so Carrie meets Seema because she decides it's time to sell her house. And there's kind of the whole Peloton thing in this episode too, right?
Oh yeah, the Peloton's kind of just like haunting her,
yeah,
not letting her move on.
Rid of it, and then she comes back for some reason, and they've like put it back or put one back there because they think it like brings the space into focus.
That's right. She said, she's like, you know, it would go great in this bathroom as a Peloton, and I laughed because I thought, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but it was just like, who puts Pelotons in their bathroom? But sure,
New Yorkers.
Okay.
They're like, oh, this is the space for that. I guess
maximize the space.
I did kind of think the same thing. I was like, well, if I had a Peloton, it'd probably be in the garage.
Right.
But I guess you don't have a garage in New York. So yeah. So by a window. We haven't really talked about her. We talked about her smoking and her fabulous shoes. But did you have any initial impressions of her?
Not really. I mean, I liked her. I thought it was funny when you read at the top of this episode here and you read the little synopsis of the episode, they said a self-made real estate broker or whatever they described it as. I don't know that they really said that in the episode. So that was sort of like news to me, but I thought it was cool. I like her energy.
Yeah, she seemed cool. They kind of started to like hit it off right away. There's the whole scene where they're in that other house that Carrie's obviously not interested in. And it's got like the motorcycle in the house. And then Carrie gets hit on by the guy.
Yeah.
Like nightmare guy or whatever she says. And yeah, I was cringing at that too. I was like, oh no. I hope we haven't all been through this, but I have a feeling we have.
So unfortunate.
So that was interesting. And it seemed like that kind of helped them to bond. And she talks later in the episode about how, I think it's this episode where she talks about how it feels good to kind of talk to somebody who who doesn't know more dog toys, who doesn't know kind of a lot about big, or, you know, it's kind of like going back to her single self and feeling more like herself, just talking about like weird stuff like that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Just letting her kind of, yeah. You know, I hadn't even really made that connection until you said that just now. Like her in the very beginning, first thing that happens is she gets a coffee and right away she has to have this conversation about Big and how he died. And so maybe what I wasn't really noticing was with this new friendship, it's sort of some relief, like, oh, I can just talk and just be myself and I don't have to talk about what just happened.
Yeah.
So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. She could just kind of relax.
Yeah, it really seems like she needs that right now. Sometimes it's like you need people to talk about like the scary big things in life, but then you also just need like a break. And it feels like that's
Yeah.
what's giving her. So
Yeah.
that's nice.
Even at
Yeah.
her job when they were saying like, oh, you're being so insensitive to Carrie by talking about corpses. I guess they were sort of showing how it's like following her everywhere.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I didn't think about how it's kind of like a thread through the whole thing. I was really sad about how they had to like basically like make her apartment really boring again.
Oh, yes. I hated her apartment when it was all done. I was like, I get that they had to make it kind of basic, but oh, they did it so basic.
It's just like, I just
It was
can't believe
wild.
there wouldn't be somebody in the world that would come into that apartment as is and be like, this is a
Right.
fabulous apartment. Like,
I would be so excited. I'd be like, oh, I don't even have to decorate now. It's already done.
yeah, like this is just cool. Like it's all luxurious. And then it looks like a boring hotel room when they're done.
Right. I
But I mean,
know.
that's coming from me with, with my
Right.
chandelier above me. And, I like things to be a little bit extra. So yeah, that made me sad. I was like, oh no, like, and even again, movie 2 is kind of like starts with her finishing that apartment
Hmm.
and, and the whole thing with Big and the shoes on the couch and stuff. So I was like, oh, that's sad. Like she's kind of having to erase that part of
Yeah.
the thing.
Was that around when she has to get his ashes and move them?
That is a big part. I think that's when she comes back and sees the Peloton there again.
Mm,
And
that's right. She just has to get out of there.
yeah, and I guess that would be probably right when it's boring too. And she says something about like, I'm going to get big and get out of here. And I was like, oh, I didn't even think about it until she grabs the box. And then she puts them
Yeah.
in the closet and she's like, oh, just for now until we know like where you want to be or something like
I
that.
was gonna say that. I just, for some reason, that hit me in such a sweet spot in my heart. Like putting him in the Barney's bag, for whatever reason, I like loved that. I loved that moment of like putting him in the Barney. It just felt right somehow in like a weird way. It felt like a very like Carrie thing to do. But then when she was putting him in the closet with all the shoes, I was like, oh, I don't know if that's like the place for. And then when she like spoke directly to it, I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
That it felt good and it felt like sweet and it just felt kind of yeah, it was like a little moment that it was kind of sad but kind of sweet. I appreciated it.
It's like, what would you do? You know what I mean? Like when I think about it,
Right.
I'm like, what would if I had my husband's ashes in a box, what would I do with them?
I know. And it's
Like
not very
that's such a
Carrie to like just put it on the
scary.
mantle or something.
Yeah, I feel like I would be somebody who'd like go and make a day of it and like scatter them because I think that's
Right.
what he would like as well. But at the same time, like I think it would take a lot of time to kind of do that and really like let go. And
Yeah.
it's just such a heavy thing. And yeah, and one thing I thought about was immediately when I saw her putting him in the Barney's bag, I was like, oh, like Barney's is closed now. Like Barney's
Yeah.
is shut down and closed. And, that's like a huge part of her past, right? Like shopping at
Yeah.
Barney's and, I mean, as silly as it sounds, and then he is obviously a huge part of her past. And I just thought, oh, two things that are like done now. I mean, it's
Yeah.
kind of a weird way to put it, but I kind of noticed that when she had the Barney's bag, like I feel like that had to be somewhat intentional because it could have been Nordstrom. It could have been something else, it could have been Saks,
Yeah.
like something that's still open, but it happened to be an old bag from a place that's no longer open.
I know. I noticed that too. Yeah.
Anyway, oh my goodness. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes. So if this feels like I just jumped completely into a different thing, it's because it's where my notes are. But Stanford.
That was next on my notes too. I just looked
Okay.
down and I'm like, literally the next thing is just Stanford's letter.
So this is that was probably the last we would have seen of him, I'm assuming. I don't know that
I'm
we're
assuming
actually,
too.
because this feels like they had to like intentionally do this to like write him out.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
I
I
was
agree.
under the impression that we would get him most of the season and then they'd have to write him out next season.
Me
But
too. I was a little sad because I've been really enjoying him,
yeah.
but I literally guffawed when they were talking. I like, for some reason, it was so funny to me when Anthony's describing his letter and they're both just so sad. And he says, I don't get it. We were so happy. And I just thought that was
Me too.
hilarious.
Me too.
Especially because
Yeah.
in this same episode, he was saying how Stanford had like lit his address book on fire. And I'm imagining this like such a tumultuous relationship, like so toxic in so many ways, but so much like I want just a show of Stanford and Anthony. Like I was cracking up with them. And then for him to just look so serious and so sad and like, we were so happy.
It was perfect. It was perfect.
I loved it so much.
Oh, that was funny. Yeah, I was, well, and like I loved the drama of it, right? I thought that was kind of funny. And the fact that he's there for a TikTok star is very modern and kind of funny.
Yes. Yeah.
Also kind of sad because it had to be a little bit unceremonious, but at least it makes some sense because obviously they weren't very happy,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah.
It needed to end. And I actually kind of thought it would end at some point just because they didn't turn in like, during the show, they would kind of nip at each other, but they didn't turn into this like happy, loving couple. So I thought like, oh, they're probably going to break them up at some point. So it wasn't super surprising, but a little sad that we're done probably with Stanford because I'm going to miss him.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, even the wedding, in the second movie, it was like they still were kind of not on the same page. Like, I don't know, maybe they were, but it was unconventional page. I'm not sure, but it didn't seem, I don't know, it never felt like a good match. And I think they probably kind of listened as well to the fans who were like, you can't just take the two gay characters and put them together. Like, it doesn't mean they're compatible just because they're both gay,
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of liked the way they did it, but I also was like, oh, like he's just done all of a sudden.
Yeah, I was a little sad. And I think there was a part of me that was just kind of like, oh, that's how they're gonna, it was like answering a question for me. Yeah. It's just like, oh, that's what we get of him. Okay.
We got it. Yeah. We're wondering, here it is. The last thing that I wrote down was the replace the glass conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. I enjoyed this scene because for me personally, I don't often see people have like a rupture and a repair, but in friendship scenarios that like just feel kind of real.
Yeah.
And I like, there was something about it that I just kind of enjoyed. It was like seeing Carrie finally have to say the thing, she's kind of been avoiding it. It's been following her everywhere. It was at her coffee shop. It was at her work. And now she has to say it to this new friend. And she just has that moment that's so relatable and so real. Like, you can't replace this glass. And like, of course it's so irrational, but I feel like we've all had those moments. Like, you can't understand what this is like, And so I really like, I liked that. I liked the realness of that moment, of that kind of little mini freak out of just like, you can't fix this. And,
Julio was laughing because he was like, that's you. Like, that's exactly how you handle things. He was like, you freak out over something that is like, makes no sense really, I mean, it does and it doesn't, right? Like she's right. She's finding a reason to have her moment with that, but it's like, obviously it wasn't intentional, and like, she can just replace the glass, but she's saying like, oh, well, he touched it or did it. And it's not about that as much as it's about what she's really feeling. Yeah. Like just she's holding on to as much of him as she can, I think. Yeah. Having a hard time letting go. And so he was laughing because he knows that's how, like, if I'm not able to just say the thing, which I do kind of wear my heart on the sleeve, but if I'm not able to just say it right away, it's going to come out in some odd way like that. And so he was kind of like, oh, it's you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as we all do, I think we all do stuff like that. And it was this opportunity to have her kind of be vulnerable and sort of bring them closer together, which I did think, I don't know if I've ever been so cozy with someone who I've hired. Like I was like, Carrie's getting pretty cozy with her realtor, which is great. You know, they're becoming friends.
Yeah.
But this was just a nice moment for them to like really become friends and really see each other. And I loved how she even like was kind of like reflecting something back at Carrie, which in the moment I was like, hey, this is not your moment. This is not your time. Like, poor Carrie, you know, it's kind of just been like,
Yeah.
her husband died. Like, how can you honestly compare the two things? But then once I realized my own issues and like triggers and kind of settled down about it, I was like, oh, this actually is like a beautiful moment for them to connect and both kind of reflect and, you know, just have that moment of repair then, and then they can just be vulnerable together.
Yeah. Well, I think there, you could tell that there was a moment in their little lunch conversation where Carrie's like, oh, you know, so glad that you're still trying, or something like that, or it's so good that you're
Yeah.
still trying. And you could see her reaction, Seema's reaction was like, oh, okay, like that hurt a little bit, but it was an interesting thing that she decided. And maybe that tells you a little bit about her character, that she's going to be more direct like that, hopefully. And which is kind of
Yeah.
what we're missing right now, I think, because I think Miranda can be very direct when she needs to be, but right now she's so like caught up in all her stuff that
Yeah.
we're kind of just watching Miranda like freak out about life. And
Yeah.
then we're missing Samantha, who's also like the most bold and direct, you know. So
Yeah.
maybe they're kind of going, oh, well, maybe we can have that voice from a different character, you know, that's like, hey, like this is still not okay, or you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I definitely do. And I completely agree. I loved Samantha for that energy. And I would not be mad about having that energy back in another character.
Yeah.
Because I think it's great. It really balances them out.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
even like the whole way that she goes through the apartment, like, oh, this is beautiful, has to go. Like
Right.
just kind of,
Exactly.
you know, it kind of shows a little bit of a cutthroat type of energy. And I think sometimes that's needed.
I agree.
Yeah. I felt bad for Carrie for sure, but I also felt like, hey, good for Seema for like standing up for herself in that moment. And it seemed like it just all like wrapped up and turned out well. And you would hope that in real life it would happen that way.
Yeah.
But I don't know that it necessarily would. Maybe more mature people, okay, you know? But I think
Yeah.
sometimes people just get like, need to be a little bit butthurt for a minute and then, you know,
Yeah.
and then come back to it. But
That was pretty much the end of the episode. They have their lunch together and that was that. I mean, overall it was a good one. I enjoyed it.
yeah, it was. So did you have a favorite moment?
It was such a small one, but I actually do think one of my favorite moments was that moment when Anthony says that they were so happy. That just
Yeah.
tickled me. I love those kinds of like just quick little punchlines that tickled me.
Favorite moment. Oh, probably the beginning. I really liked the Caroline scene because it just reminded me of Mola and just life in New York. And yeah, I think that was my favorite, even though she had to be kind of like sad and tell him what happened. Just like the warmth of their familiarity, and like you could tell years and years they've, you know, come in contact just for coffee or cigarettes or whatever. And
Yeah.
yeah, I just liked that. I was like, oh, and I was actually really liked the outfit too. So,
Oh yeah.
so favorite outfit, or do you remember? You watched it more
Yeah.
recently than me.
So we know I'm not a big fashion clothes person, but I actually did like that outfit. And it was so funny. I enjoy the comfy, we know this already. I enjoy the like comfy clothes. And one of the things I noticed about that particular outfit was although she was wearing a really big skirt, that top looked really cozy. I was like, oh, I'm really digging the like slouchiness of
Yeah.
this top. So definitely something I would wear, but probably with jeans versus a big skirt. But I also loved it too, because I thought that she was like, I need to go out and get coffee. What do I put on? And that was the choice she made. And I was just like, I'm here for it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was very that's exactly why I liked it too. It's just like as she's walking out just to get coffee, she's like,
Just
I'm
to
gonna
get
wear this
coffee.
giant petticoat thing. Like, cool, 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 cool. But like a t-shirt,
Exactly.
you know?
Yeah.
I loved that. And I think it kind of shows like, oh, that same energy of like she's back in her apartment and she's going through all her old clothes and she's like, oh, what should I wear? Like,
Reminded me very much of like my kids playing dress up or just playing around for the day. And I'm like, we got to go grocery shopping. And they're like, great.
I wonder if that skirt was reused because I know they've used the Fendi baguette we talked about, and she was wearing that in that moment too, the purple bag, I think.
Could be.
I didn't recognize the shirt, but I think the skirt. Oh, now I'm wondering if that shirt is, I'm remembering an outfit where she has a striped shirt underneath another shirt. I'm like, I wonder if that's the shirt. But I was thinking about the petticoat might be the episode where she's talking about going all over the world with like Alexander Petrovsky, and she's like coming out and she has this like big petticoat thing underneath kind of a skirt.
I'd have to go back and look.
I think it's a red outfit. I'm trying to remember, but she's all dressed up. And then he's like, oh, we're going somewhere very exotic. We're going to your house. That episode where I think
I'd have to go back and watch, but I wouldn't be super surprised.
Yeah, I wonder, because it felt like they were kind of like, oh, she's working with what's in the closet and this is what she chooses because she's Carrie. You know?
Right, which I just love.
I liked that. I'm trying to decide if that was my very favorite. There was a ton of stuff. I don't know if I want to go through every single thing. You know what I did? I really liked the kind of rainbow stripe outfit that Carrie was wearing when I think when she first met Seema, maybe. And she puts on the purple aviators when she's smoking in the car. And like right as they're leaving, she puts on another like plaid in the same color tones jacket. And I just like, yes, for doing that. Like the jacket was a little bit crazy. Like I loved the outfit without it, but then she just seems so like the way she owns it. I was like, yes, I'm into that. That might be my favorite from that episode. I probably
That's a good one.
More. I think I have more than one page of notes on clothes, so I won't keep going.
It's like its own podcast.
Yes. Oh, and she does have kind of a cool, when they go to that apartment, the pastel ombre kind of looking outfit. And then she has kind of a pleated teal jacket. And she's wearing kind of a weird flat hat.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's like, I like that they keep putting her in hats. And I like, I don't know. I just like the craziness of her outfits. And like nobody gets to be quite where she is. Like Charlotte stays in this very like preppy and like buttoned up and fluffy kind of thing. But I do think they're doing cute things with Miranda. It's just not as like wild and out there as Carrie. And I like the wild and out there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fun.
Oh, okay. And so we did favorite moment, favorite outfit. I'm going to say one quote that I liked because it hit me, and I'm not intending to make a quote section, but it's like happening because as I'm taking notes, if I like a quote, I'm like, oh, it's when Carrie is saying, oh, when she goes back to the apartment and it's all beige and she says, it's like Wizard of Oz in reverse. And then Miranda says, sometimes I look around this house and there's no sign of me either. And my heart was just like, oh, like they're really like feeding us where she's going and like the depths of Miranda's despair. And I just feel like if I lived in a house and I didn't see a sign of me there, I couldn't be there.
Yeah, I definitely noticed that too. I remember thinking that, just being like, oh, she really is unhappy.
Yeah. Just seemed like a really powerful quote to put in there in such a like quick conversation.
Yeah, like you could almost just kind of squeak by it.
Yeah. Predictions.
Oh, yeah. What are your predictions?
My predictions. I think that's it for Stanford.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with a silly one today. I'm going to predict that maybe she gets to go out on a date with the hot producer. It's more of a hope than a prediction.
Yeah, I love that for her.
Go there because he's cute and I think he needs more airtime.
Definitely. I love that for her. Yeah, I feel like I agree about Stanford, and yeah, I don't know. I feel like with this one, I didn't like have any strong predictions. I was more along for the ride, but I do kind of hope that we're going to see more Anthony because I just think he's very funny. And yeah, I think we're going to just find out a little bit more about Miranda and what's actually going on with her.
Yeah, that's a good prediction. It seems like they keep leading up to it. So something's got to happen there.
Yeah, the bubble's got to burst.
Yes. Okay. Well, I think that's it for this one.
I think so.
Just a little bit of conversation on this one. Yeah, we will be hopefully posting again within the next week for episode 5. You can find us on Will You Be My Friend Show on Instagram, or Will You Be My Friend Show on YouTube, or Will You Be My Friend on Spotify now. You can also email us at willyouBeMyFriendShow@gmail.com if you have any questions or suggestions or ways that you think we could improve the podcast. And I am Kylie Garcia. I'm Vegan Coach Kylie on Instagram, vegan.coach.kylie. And you can find me at vegancoachkylie.com.
Love it. Yeah. I am Jasmine Rose Doula on Instagram. I think it's jasmine.rose.doula on Instagram. And jasminerosedoula.com.
Well, thanks for being here for another one. We'll see you next time.
All I want